Hello and welcome to Living Your Yoga. I'm your host, Melissa West, yoga educator, Phoenix Rising yoga therapist, Thai massage therapist, and I'm also the host of a free weekly yoga video podcast called Namaste Yoga. I'm really excited today because I have my friend Jackie Van Acker here with us, Ayurvedic specialist and educator, and we're going to be talking about Ayurveda and what it means to her to live her yoga. So welcome, Jackie.
Thank you, Melissa.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be an Ayurvedic specialist?
Thank you. I had been working at the bank for a really long time. I started almost when I was 17, and by the time I was close to my 30s, I was just really unhappy. I was in a lot of physical pain. I was in a lot of mental and emotional pain, and I just kept hearing a word kind of tickling in my head that was to go and practice and learn some yoga. So I actually had an opportunity to leave the bank, and I did, and I just packed it all in and took my yoga teacher training. And with the yoga teacher training, there was a small, about 20 hours of Ayurvedic training that we did. And through that Ayurvedic training, I really began to learn how a lot of what I was feeling was changeable just through simple things that I did through my day, my food, how I acted, and that they weren't an indication of who I was, kind of deeper. And it began to show some hope and a sense of comfort that there might be ways that I could really create sustainable change in my life.
So what I really like about what you're saying is that you were just a really average person, kind of struggling day by day, which is what I hear a lot of from my yoga students too, just kind of chronic pain, a kind of low level of dissatisfaction day in and day out.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that things are different now. And so I'm kind of curious about what it means for you to live your yoga now and what an average day is like for you now.
Okay. It's been about 10 years since I did my yoga teacher training. We opened our studio at the Core in London. I did meditation training, and then we've done extensive Ayurvedic training. And it's all of those practices have transformed my life. And the way the Ayurveda kind of has become infused into our daily life is in how we eat, the activities that we do, and just understanding how those things tie in with the rhythms of nature. That the different seasons have different qualities. As you can see right now, the leaves are falling from the trees. There's a little more dryness in the air, and my fingertips are a little more dry. So it's helping for me to understand that knowledge and how I can bring balance into those things. So the food that we eat, the activities that we do, and always just trying to kind of maintain a state of balance is our underlying philosophy in our home, in our work as well.
Cool. So I really like that and appreciate that. And then I also wonder about what our viewers and our listeners and our students who still have the jobs at the banks and stuff are thinking when they think, oh yeah, it's easy for you. You guys are yoga teachers and you only work a certain number of hours a day. Of course, that's easy for you. So how does this work for the average person?
I think it comes back to finding balance, and we certainly understand about doing the very best that we can, doing the very best that we can with the choices that we have, with the situation that our life is in. But there are, from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's about just aligning ourselves with the nature of our day. What time we get up, what time we eat our lunch, what the rhythms of nature are outside. It's kind of like the idea that in the wintertime you wear a coat because it protects you and it serves you, and it has a quality of safety for your physical well-being. But in the summer we don't. And how do we take into account those choices of nature in the other parts of our day? That kind of, and I guess it's those ideas that help to create stability, help to create balance, or on the other side will help to create imbalance and are really the fundamental underlying causes of disease.
One of the things that I really love about the work that I've done with you, Jackie, and the courses that I've taken with you is that your approach just makes it so simple. It's like, well, this is just easy. We're just going to do what comes naturally, and we're just going to flow with the rhythms of the day. And I was thinking about what you just said, even when we were walking over here. You said, I'm hot, but I'm walking through the grass on a cool ground. This is so calming for my constitution. And I was like, wow, that's so simple, right? It doesn't have to be this big long list. Like, I think about the list I get with my naturopath sometimes. It's like, oh my God, I don't know if I can get through one or two, let alone 16 and 17, right? Yeah. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what you do at the core.
Okay, great. At our studio we're in London right now, and we're really just excited to be expanding into Toronto. So we teach yoga classes, and we teach small, gentle yoga classes with a perspective of Ayurveda and the individual constitution of everybody in the class. We teach meditation practice, and we teach Ayurveda workshops, consultations, and we're also launching an Ayurvedic lifestyle consultant course. Just with our years of counseling and educating experience, our teachers, who are Dr. Frawley and his lovely wife Shambhavi, have offered to allow us to have his foundation of knowledge in his Ayurvedic distance learning course to now teach that course here in Toronto. It's been a really exciting time for us, and I think one of the things that we like to do the best in our work, and that is maybe one of our best gifts, is our ability to take this knowledge and make it accessible for the family. Most of the times I'm really just a mom, and I'm a wife, and I'm a woman, I'm a Canadian, and how do I take this beautiful knowledge of ancient India and make it accessible to the family, to the mother who's just trying to make a meal for her children that is helping to ground them when they're blowing like the wind one day.
Great. And one of the things that I would love to talk about is, I think you are so privileged to have what I believe to be some of the best teachers in the world in yoga and Ayurveda and Bhakti yoga, and just yoga as a very well-rounded practice. So I would love for you to speak more about your teachers.
Thank you. I will speak firstly to the teachers that we had in London. For about 6 or 7 years, the teachers that gave us our foundation were Gary and Holly Huffman of the Forest Academy, and they taught us about yoga. They took a banker, A-type, angry girl, and and just through, an unconditional love, taught us how to be yoga teachers, my husband and I both, yoga teachers, meditation therapists, and Ayurvedic educators. And just through their kind of grace and compassion of their practice. Some years ago, I had felt a really strong connection to want to go and study with Dr. David Frawley. I had studied his books. You can't really study Ayurveda without finding one of his over 40 books on yoga and Ayurveda and Jyotish, and I just felt a real calling to make a personal connection with him. So I went to India to one of their premier retreats, the Ma Ganga retreat in India, some years ago, and things transformed for me. I took their training, their teachings, their philosophy home, and I incorporated it into my life. Little bit by little bit, practice by practice, and my life changed. It was transformed. Simple practices such as how to, what it did is it transformed my daily yoga practice, which was a dedication to meditation, a dedication to yoga, but it began to weave it into my everyday life, so that when I take the small amount of time that I'm making a meal for my family, that this now becomes a practice. And this is the bhakti, or the devotion, that I've kind of weaved into my whole life, and the grace that we've received from working with these teachers. It's been amazing.
Yeah, I have to say, with my experience of having the privilege of spending only a little bit of time compared to you with Dr. David Frawley and Shambhavi, that, you hear people speak about this experience of being in somebody's presence, yes. And I used to think, hooey. Right. And then I had the experience of having a weekend with Shambhavi and Dr. David Frawley, and it changes your life, and even just being in their presence. And So there are amazing teachers out there like that. I mean, I was very skeptical of that up to that point.
Yes.
So I think that's pretty amazing. I'm wondering if we should just back up a little bit.
Sure.
And we've been talking about Ayurveda as if everybody would know what we mean by that. And you do such a good job of explaining it in a way that's easy to understand. So how about you? I know Ayurveda is huge, but why don't you tell us what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. We would say simply, Ayurveda is the science of life. For us, we interpret that a little bit more as to the art of living. So it is a preventative healthcare system that looks at how the choices that we make every day, how the food that we eat, the times that we sleep, the times that we eat, the times that we play, and how we do those things are the direct contributing factors to either our health or our unhappiness, to our disease, or to the joy in life. And that by looking at the symptoms that we have in life, we can use those as indicators, taking us back to a kind of fundamental energetic imbalance through the elements, we would say, of fire and air and water, generally, that you may have heard them referred to as kapha and pitta and vata. So the difference from much of the kind of Western view of medicine is that from an Ayurvedic perspective, it considers us as a heart and as a mind and as a physical body, and it also considers us as an individual. So if someone comes to me with an issue of arthritis, there is a different type of arthritis that everybody has and different causes for that. And so we look at them as an individual and then make recommendations accordingly. That's what Ayurveda is. It's really individual.
Right. And I think there's sort of, as yoga becomes more popularized and as Ayurveda becomes more mainstream too, and things, like you think about skincare lines that get really sold that way, and yes. It's becoming more mainstream. People have a little bit of understanding that it's a tridoshic thing and that there are 3 doshas. And what I find inevitably when we bring that up is that people say, but I don't know how to tell which one I am, and I feel like I'm a little bit of everyone. And the last workshop that I went to you with, you talked about the 3 balls of yarn.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if maybe you could use that example again, because
Sure.
for me that really cleared things up. Yeah.
I'd love to. From the Ayurvedic perspective, we have an individual dosha, or a mind-body type. And this is kind of created or, put in place at our birth. And I consider it as these 3 balls of yarn. So we kind of have our air constitution type, which we call vata, and our fire constitution type, which we call pitta, and our water, earth constitution type, which we call kapha. And each of us are just kind of born with 3 balls of different perspectives. We're all just a little bit different. Different perspectives of those different energetics. So if I have a really big fireball, and I have a bit of a bigger air ball of yarn, and then I have a small little earth and water ball of kapha. And then because my parents didn't know that I had these, and because they worked shift work or because they were just trying to do the very best they could as parents during that time, single mom for my mom especially, we had lifestyle choices. And they fed me food, and we had choices in babysitting and all these different things that just maybe weren't in line with what my constitution was. So it just began to mess up all my balls of yarn. And then every time something just isn't in line with who I am as an individual, it just begins to kind of create this big mess with these. And over time, I no longer have 3 individual balls. I just kind of have a big, messy, all of them all kind of tied in with each other. And this is what created the 10 years of headaches I had, the 10 years of backaches I had, a complete, utter discontent for life, pain and anger and fear issues. And then once I began to understand this and use the knowledge of Ayurveda, then we can begin to start to unravel those balls And that's kind of where the healing happens. It's not about taking something else to kind of mask those issues. It's really about starting to kind of unravel that mess till we kind of get them back to these three balls. And that first begins with understanding yourself as an individual.
I just love this analogy of the three balls of yarn. It totally clarified things for me. And what I think that really put clear in for me was that we all have three balls of yarn. I'm not just a pitta ball. I'm not just a vata ball. And it's not like my kapha ball is non-existent. I have one, yes. Right? And so I feel like, and you can explain this and perhaps correct me even, that when we're doing work with Ayurveda and when we're having our consultations and when we work with you, that you're helping us to create three even balls so I don't have like a super heavy pitta ball. Is that right?
No.
Okay, good, see?
But it's a really great misconception that it would be wonderful to address. So it's about becoming a balanced you, not a balance of all three. So if you, and I can use myself to a certain aspect as an example, that I have, because I have a bigger pitta ball, I have a bigger fireball, I have just more of a predisposition to go out of balance in a fiery way. So an emotional out of balance for me would maybe look more like criticalness or aggressiveness or anger, irritability. But it also means I have a greater capacity to do the positive aspects of what fire gives. It gives passion, and it gives speaking ability perhaps, and the ability maybe to teach and to lead. So, but if that makes sense, one of the things that we had always been taught by our teacher, though, is that you can borrow from the doshas that you don't have a lot of. Because we do have to have them all, ultimately the air, the vata, governs the movement of wind, of movement within your body, within your mind. We couldn't function without it, so we all have to have a little bit of it. The pitta, or the fire, governs the movement of transformation, of metabolism within the body, within the mind. And kapha, the earth, the water, it's the structure. It's the stability within the body, within the mind. So you can understand how someone who's taller, who's thinner built, has maybe more of an air constitution. Someone who's maybe a little more solid, a little more strong within their body, has more of an earth constitution. But because we do all have them, when I wasn't feeling as kapha or as nurturing, as maternal, as watery as I would like to be, I was always told that it's still there and that I can borrow a little bit from it. So I'm not trying to be balanced in them all. I'm really trying to be the best fire that I can be. I'm trying to be the best air that I can be, and to grow in the areas that aren't my strengths, or to understand them in a balanced way.
See, whenever I talk to you, Jackie, you always calm me down because I think, wow, that's such a relief for me, right? Like, I can't be something that I'm not, but I can be the best me that I am, right? So, yeah, phew, what a relief.
Yes.
Okay, you've been teaching a lot of fabulous workshops lately, so I was wondering if you could tell our viewers a little bit about them.
Absolutely. The Ayurvedic workshop is actually a bit of a conundrum because, like I've said, ultimately Ayurveda is an individual understanding of yourself, and to share this knowledge in a workshop capacity is challenging. But there are also basic rules of nature. The sun is highest in the sky, the closest to the earth at noon. And the sun is the outer manifestation, the outer representation of our digestive fire. So my digestive fire, my ability to digest and process my food, is the greatest and the strongest at noon. So a basic Ayurvedic recommendation is to eat your main meal at noontime. And that's applicable for everybody. So what we're trying to share in our workshops is some of these basic underlying truths of just how nature works, how nature operates. Like I said, right now it's fall, the leaves are drying, there's more wind, there's more air. So we're going to maybe have more of a general feeling of dryness, of ungroundedness. And that's applicable to everybody. Someone who has more of an air constitution will maybe feel it a little worse, will maybe feel more predisposed to the anxiety or the fear or the guilt, the ungrounded feeling that's kind of attached with that. So we're doing a workshop on aligning with that kind of information, just understanding the daily rhythms. As a parent, I am, my parenthood, my motherhood, my child is very much a focal point in my life right now. So we're also doing a children's Ayurvedic workshop to share that knowledge on a basic understanding of how we digest and how that affects and creates chronic allergies, chronic flu, chronic colds that we're dealing with as parents. And we're also doing right now a women's cycle workshop, a real kind of underlying understanding of the menstrual cycle. And how valuable it is to be consciously aware of this monthly lunar cycle that women are going through, as men and as women, as father, to support your daughter, as a husband to support your wife, and as a woman to support yourself. This is knowledge that needs to be, every woman that we've seen and talked to has some sort of menstrual monthly complaint. And so we're trying to address all of these general concepts in the workshops to give people an introduction to Ayurveda.
And I'm really excited to be going to the lunar cycle one this afternoon. I love that. I'm so excited. I think that is probably at the top of most women's lists when they come to see you for an Ayurvedic consultation.
Yeah, it's certainly because it's not independent. That's what Ayurveda shows us, is that every way we feel is interrelated with something else. And we just, because there's a certain time at month where it all kind of rises to the surface, we call it monthly, PMS, monthly dysfunctional syndrome. I've seen all of these different things, but it's an underlying issue of our state of health as a woman. And this is when it just has more of a propensity to manifest itself. So we're going to talk this afternoon, and we're doing this workshop again in Toronto. We've been invited to do it in Rhode Island coming up at the end of the month. So it's a really important topic, and it ties in. We also tie in a little bit of the Shakti sadhana, or just this knowledge of the flow of the Divine Mother that we've been so graced to receive from Shambhavi. And so this is it's really just the grace of being a woman, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
I love how you say that, the grace of being a woman, because I feel like that's probably not the way that most women feel at the time of the month, or many times of the month too. You've given us some really great tips already, especially the one about eating our largest meal in the middle of the day. And I appreciate so much that Ayurvedic is such an individual thing, but in the spirit of doing this as an interview that so many different people are going to be watching, I was wondering if you might have some more tips that people can take away from this interview for today.
It's a hard question, Melissa, and it puts me a bit on the spot. It's something that we deal with all the time, that people just want something to be fixed. They want a remedy, or they want a symptom to go away. I will address your question, I promise. But I just want to say that the underlying real philosophy of Ayurveda is we use symptoms to point to a direction of where the underlying imbalance is in the energetics, in the Vata, the Pitta, or the Kapha in most cases. And then we just make small lifestyle changes to bring balance to those things. So if someone at this time, and the main idea of Ayurveda is that like increases like. Just like on Facebook, right? Lots of likes bring more likes. So like increases like. So we'll talk about today. Again, it's a beautiful fall day. The air element within nature has increased. So the leaves are drying. There's a wind out here. It's a little bit cooler. I can feel that my lips are a little bit dry. I can feel that my fingers are dry. And this will manifest to different people. And this will manifest in the same kind of flow of symptoms. People may be having increased dryness, increased constipation, increased instability or just feeling ungrounded, guilt, fear, anxiety. Okay, all of these kind of fall, and any kind of lower abdominal, back pain, cramping, neck pain. This is all in general connected. And because that's increasing in the environment right now with this time of year that we're moving into, it will increase that within someone else. So if you're feeling those kinds of symptoms, a general idea would be to just do the opposite. So if it's starting to kind of get cold outside, especially in Canada, we don't recommend eating cold food. We don't recommend drinking cold water. So just a simple as change as no longer taking in cold food or beverage is absolutely transformational. It's transformational in constipation, in insomnia, and all of these kinds of things, because you're just bringing in more cold when it's already cold in the nature. And another one is just also the heaviness of the food, and using oils and those kinds of things in your diet just brings in the opposite characteristics of fall in general.
So I think those were really great tips. Thank you. Now, I know you are super excited about the big course that you're going to be offering now, and I would love for you to tell our viewers more about that too.
When we invited Dr. Frawley and Shambhavi to come for a retreat in Canada at the beginning of this year, and we organized a retreat at Niagara Falls for them, just outside Niagara Falls. During that retreat, they offered us the foundation of Dr. Frawley's Ayurvedic Healing Distance Learning course for us to now teach it here in Canada with contact hours and support. It was just such an exciting time for us because we had already been teaching this kind of idea over long term. For us, Ayurveda it's not a weekend intensive program. It's not something you can learn over a few days. It's a understanding of your lifestyle and of how the seasons change. And so we had already been teaching kind of long-term programs, but I really feel our strength is in supporting and educating and motivating people through the changes that they have to make in their life with the knowledge. So for Dr. Frawley to offer us the amazing foundation of this course as the groundwork for taking it here into Canada, it was really amazing. The program is a Ayurvedic certification course to become an Ayurvedic lifestyle consultant. It's 500 hours. 300 hours is the distance learning course through 4 specially written booklets by Dr. Frawley, assignments and exams. And then the 200 hours are the contact hours with Greg, my husband and I, over weekend retreats and workshops and hands-on instructional seminars in the kitchen with herbs, with asanas, with the yoga and the meditation and the pranayama, the breath work, all from an Ayurvedic perspective.
You make me want to take the course. So that sounds fantastic, and I'm sure people are going to be interested. So can you tell people how they can find out more about you and how they can contact you?
Thank you. On October 22nd, we will have just a free information session on the course because there's a lot involved and it's a big commitment. It also gives people an opportunity to meet Greg and I. That will be at Renaissance Yoga and Ayurveda in Cabbagetown, October 22nd at 6 p.m. You can find out lots of information on the course at our website, which is atthecore.ca. On our Facebook page as well. And we have a whole series of workshops happening still here in Toronto over October. So anybody who just wants to hear a little bit is welcome to come and get a bit of a taste and get a chance to interact with us. It's really the best way to begin to work with the knowledge.
Yeah, and I think we were talking a little bit off camera before, for those people who don't live in southwestern Ontario like us, we were talking about the possibility of doing some online courses too. Yeah, so stay tuned for those. So thank you so much for being with us today, Jackie. I truly appreciate it, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure.
So thank you so much for joining us for Living Your Yoga. If you'd like to find out more about us, you can go to my main website at www.melissawest.com. We, of course, have a Facebook page too. If you go to facebook.com/Living Your Yoga, you can like us there and see the interviews there and join in the discussion and community there. I also wanted to direct people to my free weekly yoga video podcast, Namaste Yoga, which you can view at www.namasteyoga.blip.tv. We have hundreds of episodes there for you. Right now we're doing a series of classes on yoga for the emotions, but I also wanted to direct you, because it's probably piqued your interest a bit, to a few classes that we did around introducing you to Ayurveda. They are episodes 45 through 48, and actually I use Dr. David Frawley's book, who we discussed in this interview, Yoga and Ayurveda, for as my foundation for teaching those classes. So thank you so much for being with us. We truly appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.